Today's daf is daf chav beis. We're up to daf chav aleph on the beis on the bottom of the page. So Rabbi Akiva said that when you make a shvur that you won't eat, even if only a mashu, even the slightest amount, you're already chayiv. And they said to him, where do you find that by eating a mashu, every time you eat, you do an averi, has to be the size of a kazayis. How come when it comes to a shvur, a vow, suddenly you say even a mashu? Now Akiva answers them back, where do you find b'chlal when somebody speaks? If somebody speaks and doesn't keep with the Bible, what they said, you bring a carbon. You don't find it anywhere else. So the whole thing is a chiddush. That's where we're up to. At the bottom of the page, chav aleph base. Akiva said, where do you find a precedent that it's a mashu? Everything's always a kazayis. That's what the Rabbanan say to Rabbi Akiva before he answers them back. Where do you find anywhere else that you say a few words and you bring a carbon for not following your words? You don't find that anywhere. So now the Gemara will discuss these two positions. Starting first with the Chachamim. Chachamim say, where do you find a precedent less than the Kazayis? Where? The law about in the Mullah. What about when an ant? An ant, no matter how small it is, if you ate it, you're chayiv for eating, scratch on a muscle. So the Gemara, bury your shiny. The whole idea of a kazayis is because that's a significant amount. Anything less than a kazayis is not significant. And a beria, if it's a complete, we realized before, if it's a complete being, that's how it was created, it's chashuv in its own right. And therefore it doesn't matter. So don't ask me about Namola. What about Hegdish? What about when it comes to Hegdish? You don't need a kazayis either. So the Gemara, in other words, if you use Hegdish for yourself, you're called a moil. You're stealing from Hegdish. And for example, you have to bring an asham me'ilis for stealing. And there it doesn't do with a kazayis, less than a kazayis as well. So the Gemara, but you still need a significant amount. Because you're stealing, it falls under the rule of stealing. And what's the rule of stealing? Shava pruta. So it's no different. Being a shava pruta. You don't need kazayis because it's a different criteria. Okay, what about Harei b'mefadish? If everyone agrees, if you clearly say, I make a shvur, I will not even eat the slightest amount, even a crumb of whatever this food is, and then you breach your shvur. So we see clearly that there is a precedent for less than kazayis. What's the Chacham asking Rabbi Akiva? Where do you find a precedent less than kazayis? In fact, in shvur itself, you find it. So the Gemara, mefadish. The moment you express it, that means you're saying to me even a small amount of chashuv. That's idea of barrier. In other words, the whole idea of kazayis is chashivas. You just gave it as chashivas, called achshave. You gave it chashivas. How do you offer? What happens? A guy made a shvur. I will not eat sand, and we'll soon see. Rava has a hakira sand because you said I won't eat. Eating is a kazayis, so you said the word oichu, or do we say that sand maybe is different because at the end of the day it's not really food, so it doesn't go by the rules of kazayis, even a mashu. That's what his question is. So when it says here, but he offers sand l'chayda it says achil and everything else, and it's in Yechayiv a mashu. So what do you mean about to say? Where do you find a precedent for mashu? Says the Gemara back. Are you determining now that it's a mashu? So let's resolve what the Rava said. Since the Mishnah says we don't find a precedent, that means you must say that by sand it's a kazayis. What's Rava's question? Rava says it's a kazayis or mashu. What do you mean? The Mishnah said there's no precedent. That means even sand you need a kazayis. Rava's the question. We'll soon see. I won't need ba'achal offer if you ate sand. How much you need before you violate it? Your shvua. Kazayis. Clear for the Mishnah. It's a kazayis. Says the Gemara, no. Kika amrinan b'midid the barachil. When the Chachamim say, find me a precedent in food, not some other things. In food, you don't find. Sand is not food, not an edible thing. What about it? Koinoma is, if a person said, we had this in the Dorim, koinem alai, that this koinem is a word like carbon. I want to treat this meat to be, for me, just like a carbon. Just like a carbon. Now we're going to have a big machlekes in the Tanoim whether it is me'ilah by koinimus or not. Koinimus means I'm making it like a carbon. I'm treating it like a carbon. But koinim is different than hegdish. Hegdish is now carbon for the whole world. Nobody can use it. If they do, they're moil, just like I'm moil, because now it's consecrated. If I say to me it's like hegdish, then to the rest of the world it's not asubhana, only to me. So the machlekes is there me'ilah in such a case where it's only hegdish to you. So if I use it, am I a moil or not? Is that really called hegdish? But you might ask a question about it. Koinimus, in the case of koinimus as well, even a mashu is also says koinimus nami kimefarish. Since you didn't use the word achil, normally when you swear, you say I asa this to me. I mean, from eating it. Okay, so achila is a kazayis. Over here you say koinim alai kikazeh. So therefore, since you didn't use the achila, It's a mashu. So anyway, right there, and the Chum say, where do you find a priest in the word of chil? So he brings up Kiva's counter argument. He says, hey, find me a priest in Heichem Medaber that you said a few words, or maybe carbon. You said a few words and you bring a carbon to them Medaber, maybe carbon. You don't find that anywhere else. So therefore, the whole din of Shavuos is unique. So don't tell me about precedents. It's a unique thing. Here, even a mashu, normally a kazai is here to mashu. We don't find kabbanas we don't find by words. But if somebody was Megadif and he's Mekalul, Mr. Chashoshom. Yeah, but talking about, let's say he did a B'Shegi. Every Kodesh, or whatever it is, you bring a Korban B'Shegi. B'Shegi didn't know. Megadif. So here you have a case of words, and you bring a carbon. What's the precedent about Shavuot? Says the mother Medaber v'oisek kamrinim. Where do we say that the words itself have nothing wrong with it, but then you did something to make it wrong? In the case of Megada, the words themselves are wrong. Of course, they bring a carbon. I'm saying, where do you find where the words are kosher and you did something wrong, you bring a carbon? Find me prison, you don't find. It's a unique thing. You don't know. But in Nazir, the words are all right. You said, I had any Nazir. If you become Tama, you bring a carbon. So we see you do find carbonas by words. That's your lot. But in Nazir, so more answer back. Maybe karbonai al diburi. We're saying we're talking about a case. Find me a priest, and we said words which are kosher, and then later you did something wrong. So we bring a carbon for the words that you said. Mashengi by nazir, the carbon is not for the words you said. The carbon is if you want to also start your nazirus again. It's like a guy in mechusik purim. You have to bring a carbon before you're entitled to eat kosher. So it's not to atone for the words that you said. We find a priest for that. Or generally, you bring a carbon when you finish your 30 days, when you shave your head and everything else. Again, it's not fix up the words that you said. Maybe carbon is to relay. When you finish your nazidus, you have to bring a carbon to be able to, and your haircut and everything else. Okay, your haircut we learned is not ma'akif. But you have to bring a carbon, and we had different 3 carbonas he brings. One of the carbonas is ma'akif, those are not. In order to be able to rejoin. Nothing to do to fix up the words. We don't find a priest for that. You know what I mean? But a hegdish. What about in the case of hegdish? He said words, perfectly normal words. And what happens if let's say he was loyal to hegdish, he steals from the hegdish? You have to be a carbon shamila. So you find words that are nothing wrong with the words, and if you breach them, you have to fix it up. Those words. So the mother, that's not hegdish is not like a shavua. Hegdish is usher to the whole world. That's a different story. Hegdish, you're asking the whole world. When you say kainim a lie, the only one that is also to you, it's like a shua. And yet you're mile. So we see there is a precedent. What's that about Kiva saying, oh, where do you find a precedent for that? Because Rabbi Kiva holds, Ein Me'ila b'Kainim. As I told you, there's a Machlekes Tanaim. Whether there's a Me'ila b'Kainim or not, because Kainim is different than an ordinary Hegdish, because it's only us to you, nobody else. So do we treat it for the Gabi yourself at least, like Hegdish, and therefore if you use it for your own benefit, you're Moyel, and you have to do all the dinim of Me'ila? Or do we say, even for yourself, it's just a case of Shua, Asamana. It's just like a carbon. It's not really a carbon, and therefore there's no Me'ila. Rabbi Kiva holds no Me'ila. So therefore, he says there's no precedent where words are good and turn out to be, you have to fix them. Omar says, "Rather, machlekes is bestam. The machlekes is the chachamim. Rabbi Kiva, whether Shavuos even a mashu or a kazai is stam. Aval b'mefadish. If you clearly say, enunciate, I will not eat even a mashu, then it didn't hakel b'choshu. Everyone agrees, even a koshu, you're already over. My timer, mefadish. Now make it buried them. We just learned before that when you spell it out, you're making it choshu. But nothing. If he said, I will not eat. So the question is, normally achil is a kazayis, but Rabbi Kiva says, stam, it's even a mashu, because you went against your words. But if he says, I will not taste sounds like even the slightest amount. Taste. But taste, I'm not swallowing, it's how much. When you taste something, it's a lot less than when you eat something. So therefore, taste is a mashu. Everyone agrees that the tasting is even a kosher. The Gemara Pshita is not obvious. Tasting is not eating. Why would you think that Racham hold in this case in the kazais? I would have thought lead time. When people sometimes when they say let's eat, they say let's taste, and they mean eating. So I would have thought. Remember, we're talking about the shavua and things that people the way people speak. So maybe even though he used the word tayim, he means a kazais. It's commercial on that. No, we look also at the words, and tayim means even a kosher. Papa, Machlekes, the whole Machlekes is B'Shavuos. The whole Machlekes is whether it's a kosher, whether it's a kazayis by Shavuos. Aval the koinim is even a hakka b'choshu. By koinim is everyone agrees that koinim kickers alai that this bread should be like a carbon and use the word koinim. It's a masha. And why? Because he didn't use the word achila. Stam achila is a kazayis everywhere. So the question is, when you said it, what did you mean? But when you didn't just use the word achila, then why should it be kazayis? My time at koinim is now making the commit to shmod achila. Since you didn't mention the word achila, is kimmefarj as if he's clearly saying, I don't care what amount. So the Gemara Meisel asks a question on the Papa. It says in the Braisa, Shnei Koinim is mistarfin. If you let's say took two pieces of bread and you said these two loaves of bread are us to me like Koinim, and you ate a half a kazayis of one loaf and you ate a half a kazayis of another loaf, they are combined together. Like what? If you're shaking, you bring a carbon. And that question would be obvious. If you just told me Koinim is even a kosher, what do you have to be mistarfin for? And then they continue, stay Shavuos. If I made two vows, I said, these two loaves of bread, I swear I will not eat these two loaves of bread. Aim is start for a half a kazayis of one loaf and half a kazayis of another. Why should Shavuos be different? We'll soon see what a princess has to say. Rameh says, Kainim is Kishvuah. Rameh disagrees. He says, Kainim is just like Shavuos, they're not mitzdaref. By Kainim also, they're not mitzdaref. We'll soon see why. Now, the Isaac kosher, our question on the pub is very simple. If you tell me about Kainim is well, you don't need a kazayis. Islam what do you have? When do they combine? So the Gemara says we're talking about a different case. You think he just said the word Kainim. We're talking about here the Amar. He said Achila mezu alai Kainim, Achila mezu alai Kainim. He said, but each one, and he used the word Achila as well. So therefore, you need a kazayis, and that's why you need mistarif. So the Gemara. So, if you expressly separated each loaf from each other, it's like two separate Shavuos. So each one, you have to have a kazayis. So if I ate a half kazayis this loaf, I didn't do an aveda. If I ate a half kazayis loaf, I didn't do an aveda. So what do you mean? How can they be started? I have two separate kainim there. So if if each one is a separate kainim, each one doesn't have a share. What do you mean they combine? The Amar, okay, let's fix it up, amend it again. Achila mishtayin alai kainim. You did have two separate kainim. You put them together. You said that these two loaves of bread, achila mishtayin, eating. So you're ready to kazai, eating your kazai. From these two, on me is kainim like hegdis, and that's why they are mistared. Why Shavuos are mistared? The Kabbalah Shavuos is a contrast, which said the same thing. The Amar Shavuos right? Shavuos the same thing. I said I will not eat the two loaves of bread. No, so why aren't they mistarted? Am I mistarted? Why don't they combine as well? Comes along a Pinchas. Not often that we have a that has the name of a trader. Pinchas is definitely not a proper name. Even a Pinchas whatever, it's not a proper name. No. This is a papa. We're asking a papa. This is many years later. Omar that Pinchas answers to explain our papa. There's a difference between Shavuos and Kainim. What's the difference? Shiny Shavuos. Let's say since you said two loaves of bread, if you did it b'shaygig, you bring and you ate it b'helam echad. We're not going to say, oh, you bring only one chatas. We're going to say that each loaf is a separate chatas. For example, if you said, I will not eat mikikazu mikikazu, we're going to treat that like two separate vows. Each loaf has its own vow. And if you ate it b'helam echad, it's two avedas. And you're going to bring two separate kabbanas. And we'll see in the next mission, in today's Gemara. If you said, I won't eat pas chitin, I won't eat pas oilin, I won't pas whatever, kusmin, you bring three different kabbanas, even though all bread, because he itemized each one. So therefore, since the kabbalah is separate, so even though you said mizu, even he said, instead of saying each one separately, you said Shavuos la'oichel mekikazu mizu, even though you put them together, they're not mistaris. It's considered like two separate Shavuos, so they're not mistaris. However, the kainim is, if you hold that kainim is like a carbon, no, but if it's like a mayom, a meila. So if you had hana from this loaf of bread, and you had hana from the next loaf of bread, you only bring one carbon asham meilas. Because when it comes to meila, we combine today and tomorrow and next week and the week after, you combine them all to one carbon meila. So since by meila it'd be one carbon meila, so therefore by Shavuos as well, we are mitzadas. That's the difference. So have a good reason why to separate Shavuos and Kainim is what Meir said. Kainim is Shavuos, just like Shavuos. Now mitzad of Kainim as well. Why not? Shavuos, I understand why Shavuos and Amitzav we just explained, because since it comes a carbon, they have three like separate Shavuos. If I said mizu, each loaf is a separate, and you ate all the hell you bring three chatois, for example. I understand therefore it's not mitzaref, separate rules. Elokai are my line. But Lochayda numbers, you just said that even, by carbon ashamilas, if you hold it in ashamilas, it's gone forever. No, so why are they mitzaref? What's a meisvara? You must be right. Eifach. Swap it around. But I made that Shavuos is the Kainamas. Right. Kainamas, a Kainim definitely mitzaref. And the Meir holds that Shavuos is like a Kainim. In other words, even though I agree with you when it comes to the carbon chatas, each one is separate. The lesser that we don't hold up Pichasvara, therefore, when it comes to a Malkus, they treat us separately. No, we're mitzaref. And that's the Chiddush of the Meir. That Shavuos, when it comes to Malkus, you're mitzaref. Ravina comes along and says, I'll explain a papa, kikar, but a papa in your Malkus. A papa is talking about Malkus. A papa himself is talking about Malkus, kitana hili in your carbon. A papa is talking about Malkus when he says that a koinim is that when a papa said that a koinim is a kosher, what was a papa said? A papa said a koinim is a kosher, you get Malkus. He's talking about Malkus. And here the Bryce talking about kabbanis. Like kabbanis, they're mitzaref, because kabbanis you need a certain Hasham Eilis, you need a Shavah Pruta. But when it comes to Malkus, even a Mashu. That's what so two different things. Don't mix the two together. Titanin and carbon, you need a Shavah Pruta. Hasham Eilis, you need a Shavah Pruta. That's why we're discussing mitzaref. But when a papa was talking about Malkus, you did amazing. You machshav it, even a kosher. Remember, Malkus, you do amazing, and carbon is b'shegi. You weren't machshav it, you didn't know you were doing anything wrong. So you might remember that. So what are you telling me? The Sabri Rabban hold that. So we're talking about Kabbanis and the Rabban argue Ramei and Rabban say yes, Meila but Koinamas. Obviously, they're holding that is a Meila by Koinamas. We're discussing whether you mitzaref or not mitzaref. But Tanya, we learned elsewhere that the Rabban clearly hold that there's no Meila. But Tanya, we learned Kika's or Hegdish. The person says that this Kika is Hegdish, and then he ate it. Or anybody, Mal. Because you made it hegdish, it's kodesh for the whole world, and if somebody uses it, it's stealing. Or if he says kikazu alai hegdish, if he says that this loaf of bread is only for me hegdish, no, but that's kodesh. Who mo? Only one who's moil is he, and not somebody else. In other words, there is meila by kodesh. Who says that? Opinion, because it's not really kodesh, it's not strong enough that you can transfer it to money, let's say, so you can never redeem it. These are the words of a mayor. However, Chachamim say, nobody's stealing. Why? Because the Chachamim clearly say you cannot steal by Kainim. So the Chachamim say there's no stealing by Kainim, and you just said that we're talking about Mitzadif because we're talking about you need to Mitzadif because this for Shamilas. You must say you're right. Eifuch. This Braisa here, we're going to swap the names around. Whether it's personal or not, or for the whole world, you're not mila, fisha ain't mila, kanama. Those are the words of America. I'm going to say, who mal the chaveda loymal. So I'm going to say that you're the one who's stealing, not your friend. So what do you tell me? A man holds there's no stealing by konamis. So Rameir says that koinim is like a shvua. That's what you said. A koinim, Rameir said that koinim is like shvua. And therefore, the original according to Ravina, we didn't swap the price around. So I made hold that Kainim is like sure that what? That they are not mitzaref. Now who cares if mitzaref not mitzaref? You say there's no carbon. You that made hold there's no meila by Kainim. Who cares if it's mitzaref not mitzaref? Who cares if it's a kazai? There's no meila by Kainim because it's only usher to you. So more ask. Konamas Itzarupa the limit star. It sounds like the problem is a half a share here, a half a share, they don't combine. But if there been a full share, it would be awesome. But I mean, you just said there's no Me'ila by Kainim according to the mayor. So you're right. L'divreyen the Rabbanon Kamlu. He's arguing now the Rabbanon. The mayor saying this. Literally, I hold ain't Me'ila by Kanama. Who cares if they combine, they don't combine, it makes no difference. There's no carbon Me'ila by Kainim. Or believe it through you. Is be moided the koinamis kishvus. At least that koinim should be like shvus that they don't combine. But Rabban shvus is a big difference. Shvus they don't combine because the other swara when it comes to the karmachatas, they're separate. They're considered like separate isurim, so therefore they don't combine. But koinamis. What do you call it? There's no svara picha by konamis, and therefore, it's because it's one long, no matter how you mail today, mail tomorrow, and therefore they combine. Now, good question with this one before. If a guy makes a shvua, I will not eat. Stop. I will not eat. And then he ate sand. The question is a kazayis or not? So he says here first. He says, but Don't talk about his potter because he's eating. Eating is food. So, sand is not food. So if you ate sand, you're not over. Okay, but boy, what happens? They clearly specified. I want to eat sand. Become. How much does he have to eat before he's over? Do we say keeping the Amar Shala Eichel? He said the word Eichel eating. Then daita kazayis, like any other food. He meant the kazayis. Ideal, perhaps keeping the lamidi da'achli. Nobody eats. It's not a food. Inchi, people don't eat it. B'choshu. Therefore, over here, it doesn't apply the rules of achila, even a drop. Teiku. Good question. But you have a question. And a person makes a shvuah. I will not eat the seeds of a grape. Now, nobody eats seeds of a grape on its own. You eat it maybe part of the grape, not on its own. Is bekama. How much do you have to eat before we say you're liable? Do we say keeping them as achal de tarubis? Normally, you eat the full grape and you include the things as food. Daita kazais, like any other food, a kazais. But dilma keeping lebiina achal leinsha. Nobody eats it on its own independently. Daita masha. Therefore, there's no amount. I don't want seeds. I don't care if it's one seed. Take boy, Rav Ashi asks a question. Nazir, a Nazir. Sha'amur says, Shvua. Now, a Nazir is chayiv, you're not allowed to eat a kazai. Kazai is mahat Torah, malchus, everything else. And then we have a machlekes Rabbi Yochanan Shlokish, if less than the kazai, if it's less than the kazai, it's also mahat Torah. Shlokish says, chatzishir is mutter mahat Torah, is only also mahat and Rabbi Yochanan says chatzishir is also mahat Torah as well, so you don't get punished, and you don't bring a carbon. Chatzishir of grapes, even no, not at all. No, even if he's worried, even if he's warned, there's no carbon. You don't start this again unless you come tummy. You don't start this again for eating grapes. If you but you don't get malchus. No, only two. But if you he did not eat it. He gets malchus. If you what do you call it? If you ate if he ate a chatzishir, we warned him, he's not going to get malchus. You don't get malchus for that. And b'shegi, you don't bring a carbon. Okay, so what happens if he clearly said Shavuos shaloi oichel chatzim over and above the naziris? He made a shvuah. I won't eat the chatzim. I won't eat the seeds. Now l'chayda bekama. L'chayda, what are you making a shvuah for? You're not allowed to eat it anyway. And we have a rule that one shvuah cannot land another shvuah. So maybe you had in mind. Less than what the Torah asked. So according to the Shlokish, it's very simple. You had in mind less than a kazayis. It's clear. What else did you do? You made a shvuah. It wasn't a waste of words. You made it because the Torah mattered. I'm going to ask it as well. According to Rabbi Yochanan, Taisha asked, according to Rabbi Yochanan, how's it going to fit? So either Rabbi Ashi is going to ask this question according to Shlokish, or even according to Rabbi Yochanan, says Taisha. And the Machlekes are showing him. Even though it's Chatzishir Osam not Torah, it's a step lower, weaker than those. And in other words, when do we say Mujbe over Oimid Mahasina is only on a Kazais because it's a strong Isser, bring a carbon, Malchus. But if it's less than the Kazais, even if it's Osam not Torah, it's a weaker Isser, and it's possible for a Shvuah, because a Shvuah you get punished. So it's a step above a Chatzishir, and therefore it's possible to be Chal. Or says places, maybe you had in mind Shaloi Kederech Hanosim. In other words, when you chayv only if you did the normal way, but make a shvuah, you're trying to make sure that it's you're extending it. Even things which are according to Torah, chatzis that's not Torah. If you eat it the normal way, not if you eat it the not normal way, or you have a not the normal way, and comes to, and that's what my shvuah is coming to add. So this is Rav Ashi's question. Another shamashul loichel chatzim bekaman. You really say keep it to kazayis is really nice to since mahatorah it's already also kazayis. Kikam mishtabah hater mishtabah. What are you doing? You're saying obviously you want to add something. On the head, but that time mashu, you had a mind of mashu. Or do we say or do we say because he said I will not eat? Toshma coming here, we learned this before. He said a general shvuah, I will not eat. But what he ate was things which are awesome at anyway. Will he get malchus because he ate, or do we say, look, since this is awesome at Yeshua did not land on that? Is chayiv? Chacham say chayiv. A shvuah cannot be chal on another shvuah. So we answered yesterday bekoilan. Those we will see. You said I will not eat anything, and since you're not allowed to eat bread and meat and kosher things, it also falls on the things which are also to you anyway. But Shimon Pater, why Shimon Pater? Because he says one shvuah cannot be chal on another shvuah. The part that it could be chal is chal, but not ashkatzim but amasim. Because you combine them all together. However, the Shlokish said, we had this yesterday, you know what we're talking about over here? You're taking it closer. Before, it was Asher Kazayas, right? You're not allowed to eat treif, Kazayas, and therefore, we're going to say you meant a mashu. How is it a mashu? So it depends if you follow Rabbi Kiva or the Chacham. According to Chachamim, let's say stam shvu is a kazayis. So we're talking about a case here, but mefarish. You clearly spelled out chatzi shir. You spelled out. I'm not even going to need less than I'm not even going to need less kazayis. Believe it, Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say you have to spell it out. You spelled it out. Or according to Rabbi Kiva, even stam. Believe Rabbi Kiva that says that when a person says tam shvu, it means even a mashu because he didn't use the word achila. No, but otherwise that's b'choshu. Now the question is when the veila the mujboy masinihu the nevela which you're not allowed to eat anyway is the chichatz legabenaz. Just like over here in the nevela you could eat, but the Torah asks it. So too over here the chatz for another Torah asks. And we're saying the time, the only reason why you're going to be over the is the punish because you spelled out in Yeshua a mashu. You have to spell it out. How like punish had you not spelled it out? Daita kazayis, the dasa kazayis. Shmamra is not a clear eye. The same thing in your question over here. That what do you call it? When you said a Nazir said, "I will not eat Shavuos shelo echel he meant kazayis. So let's resolve Rabba's question where he said Shavuos shelo echel ofer become if they said I won't eat sand and how much do I have to be over? Tif should say well sand less sand. They say you have to say it's a kazayis because just like you cannot eat nevela, you cannot eat sand. And in both cases, we say by nevela we say it's only a kazayis unless you spell out clearly otherwise. So clearly even less than a kazayis. If you don't, we say it's a kazayis, even though you can't eat it. So same over here. It's nevela is not edible. The offer is not edible, but you said achila means a kazayis. The kazayis on nevela kafar damya. Nevela is no different than sand. The time of the punish only because you spelled out less than a kazayis. How like punish, daita kazayis. So we're already comparing. Loy offer barachilu klav. Loy offer is not food at all. So therefore, the rules of achila don't apply. Nevela bas achila. Navas, there's an extraneous reason why you can't. But how do you realize a lion sitting on top of it prevents you from eating it? In other words, it's an extraneous to the etzavzach, and that's why we need it to spell it out. Otherwise, achila. Mishnah. Shavua, generally speaking, we'll talk about what we say when you say eating means drinking as well. So he made a shvuah shelo eichel, I won't eat. And then v'achal v'shasa, you ate and you drank. Ein chayv v'lachas. You chayv only one. If a guy said I won't eat and he drank, he's also chayv. So you might want to know why aren't you chayv then too? Because shvuah shelo eichel incorporates two separate things: eating and drinking. So the chayv you ate and drank is your chayv too. We'll talk about it. What about he said shvuah shelo eichel slash he spelled it out? I will not drink. I will not eat. And then v'achal shasa ate and drank, and they warned him chayv time. Moshe you bring two kabbats. Shvuah shelo eichel he made a shvuah I won't eat bread. I won't eat anything. And then you ate three types of bread. Pas chitin, pas soyin, pas kusmin. You ate three types of bread, but my shvuah was only for one. All breads. In the chayv alachas. They all come under the same iser of you said you won't eat. But shvuah, if you spelled it out, pas chitin, I won't eat bread of wheat. Pas soyin, I won't eat bread of barley. Or pas kusmin, and spelled I won't eat these three things. And then chayv for each one. What happened? He said shvuah shelo eshter. He made a shvuah I will not drink. He made a shvuah he will not drink. V'shasa mashkin harbi. He made a shvuah he won't drink, and he drank lots of liquid. 10 kazesim in the chayv alachas. Or he drank all kinds of drinks. If it's a carbon, it has to be behelam echad. But he drank wine, soda, juice, and all that kind of stuff. It's one of it. It's all under drink. But shvuah, if he spelled out, let's say I want to drink wine, v'shem and oil, vash and honey, and then v'shasa he drank each one a separate carbon. Shvuah shelo eichel. He said shvuah I will not eat, and then ochal, and he ate. Oichlin she'einen ruin lachila. Let's say he made a shvuah that he will not eat, and then he ate things which are not suitable to eat. Uvishasa mashkin she'einen ruin things which are not suitable to drink. Potter, because when you said eating means what normal people eat. If he said shvuah shelo eichel, this is what we just learned before. If he said a shvuah I will not eat, but he ate nevelas, trefish, gotcha, and that's edible food. Just halacha says you can't eat it. Then you're chayiv. The shvuah cannot fall on a shvuah, so we said it's bekoil because he included also mutar, things which are mutar. And Avshim patas because shvuah cannot land on a shvuah. Omar, if a guy says koinim ishti nenes li, I will answer my wife like koinim, like a carbon. To have any benefit from me, I'm to her like a carbon. Im achalte yom, if I ate today. But what did he eat? He ate. He said, if I eat today, then I don't want my wife to have any pleasure in me. You know, he's trying to make sure that he keeps his promise. Yeah, it's to me. The gabi me. There's a big machlekes the Rambam and the there's a big machlekes the Rambam and the Ramban. In that case, who's over the Veda? You say, I'm also to my wife, can I have any enough if I eat it too? And let's say you ate today, your wife is not allowed to have but she does. Who is the one who's over here? The wife? Or but other Shem say, how can you make that wife? How could she be over there because you decided? It's the I'm the one who's over there. I think the Ran and the Rambam. But who ochal nevelas trefish kotzer masim? So he said, my wife, if I eat today, Baba Yasser, and what he ate, he thinks of the treif. And he the fact that he ate it. So what if he shouldn't have eaten it, but he did? So I will not eat or drink. He's chayiv. Ibai say, how do you know that the drinking is included in eating? Ibai say masvara, Ibai say makra. Ibai say masvara, it's a logical when a person says to his friend, nitem midi, let's go eat something or taste something, obviously you drink as well. But I leave, what do you do when you invite in the house? You don't put any drinks on the table, you give it food and drink. Svara. Ibai say makra pasik, shti b'chalachila, that drink is including food. How do you know that drinking is part of eating? It says regarding Ma'aser Sheni, you should eat before the Eibusher where he decided to place, his rest his place. Ma'aser, the Ma'aser of the Goncha, your grains, with your wine and oil. It says that and Tidosh is Chamra wine. Uksiv v'achalta. The Torah starts off v'achalta, you should eat where I mashaka my place there, my shechina there. And then he talks about food and drink. The Dilma Nigra, maybe it's talking about you brought on Nigrin, which was supposed to be beetroots, and you put them all together, and it becomes like a food. Anigran is maya de silka. Anigran is water from beetroots. Aksigran is maya de kulashluki, and aksigran is water of any vegetables, and you mix it together with wine like a soup. So it's not. Who says talking about wine on its own like a drink? It says, what do you do with the money for the Ma'aser Sheni? You swap it over. You go to your Shleima, you can purchase whatever you want. Yayin chamru clear. What's wine? Wine is drink. Even it says, you should eat. That's no better. But it says, something that makes you drunk. Maybe it's about, again, a dry date. The time we learned, he drank dvash, honey, the cholov, the milk, because you'll be intoxicated. So how do you know that it means drink? When we talk about yayin v'sheicher nazir shouldn't drink. Ma'alahal and yayin, it's wine. Avkan yayin, it is wine. We'll stop over